evening, 4th grade. Going to work today on representing decimals with base 10 blocks and hundreds charts. So, that being in mind, please go ahead and make this the title of your next math notebook page. And after you've done that, close it up and give me your full concentration until we get to the we do's. Oh, good old base 10 blocks, right? I've been working with those for a long time, probably since kindergarten, I would probably guess. So, and these are real familiar, right? You're used to, in base 10 blocks, this is one block, right? And there's 100 of them. And if that's one, then a whole bar is 10, which they usually look like. I have some. Take them out of the bag here. It's like sometimes you just get one by itself. You know, if you see one of those, that's a 10. And each one block by itself is a 1. And then the whole thing is 100, right? So I guess kind of in the grand scheme, you think like this is 100, this is 10, and this is 1. But there's another way we can think about that. Now that we're kind of used to fractions and we're starting to get used to decimals, is instead of thinking as this is 1, I can think of the whole big piece as a whole. And if I think of the whole big piece as one whole, then this, 10 of these fit in here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this is 1/10 of the whole. And 100 of these fit in here. So this is 1/100th of the whole. So we're going to reverse that thinking today. Instead of thinking 100, 10, 1, we're going to instead think 1/110th of that, and 1/100th of that. All right? So let's do a little. Let's try this. So let's represent the decimal 34/100ths using base 10 blocks and a hundredths chart. So if I'm going to go back to I'll start with the base 10 blocks. If I go back here and, oops, I could go right on here. So I'm going to represent the decimal 34/100. So remember we kind of talked about this is tenths and this is 100ths. So I can read this as 34/100ths. That's how I say it. 34/100ths. So 34/100ths would be 34 of these, because each of these is 1/100th. And so I can represent 34/100ths by getting 34 of these. Now, that's kind of a clumsy way to do it, since this is a whole. A faster way to do it than 34 little ones would be to say, well, I need 3/10ths and 4/100ths. This is going to be 10 of these. So I could say I'm going to do 34/100ths as 10, 20, 30, and then 400. So now if I look at this, this is 3400s, right? If I counted every one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. So that's 34/100ths with base 10 blocks. Or I can look at this and say it's 3/10ths, 3 of these 10th pieces, and 4 of these 100th pieces. I can see it either way. Or I can just count 34/100ths and just count them all up. So that's how I would do it with the base 10 blocks. Sometimes instead of base 10 blocks, we may ask you to do it with a hundreds chart instead, which is fine. So if you do that, same thing. I'm going to think of this number I can do two different things. One thing I can do is just say this is 34 100ths. And I could color in 34 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. So if I want to just count every single block, I can just read it as 34 100ths and shade in 34 out of the 100th pieces. No problem, because that's the same as 34 100ths. The other thing I can do is I can think about this being tenths and hundredths. So the other way I could shade the same thing is that I could say, well, a tenth, each of these columns is a tenth. I can't, it's too small for me to write. Right? This is 1/10 of the whole thing, the whole column, because there's 10 columns in the 100. That's a tenth, that's a tenth, that's a tenth, that's a tenth, and so on. And so I could say to myself, well, also another way I could think of this is I could shade in 3/10, so like 1, 2, 3/10, and I'm going to shade in 400ths, and I get the same thing. So either way works fine. So that is the decimal. That is 34 hundredths or 34 100ths. They're the same thing. You can always just kind of convert to the fraction and shade it in. Let me do one more. How about just 500ths? These can be the more confusing ones, the ones where there's an extra zero in there at some point. So I'm going to go back to my blocks here. And so now I'm representing the number 5 100ths. So that, get these out of the way. I say that as 5 100ths. Right? So hundredths are these guys, the small ones. Because each of those there are 100 of those in this big piece, right? So if this is one whole, there are 100 small squares in the whole, and so I would represent 5 100ths with 5 of those, and that's it. There's not even 10, so I don't need even one of the big pieces. And you can tell that from the place value too. You know, this is the tenths place, and this is the hundredths place. And as you can see, there are no tenths, no these, and 5 of these. So it works the same way either way. And on the hundredths chart, instead, I'm going to say that is 5 hundredths is how I would say that, 5 hundredths. And so each of these, that's 1 100th, 2 100ths, 3 100ths, 4 100ths, 5 100ths. So 5 100ths just looks like that. I don't even have a full tenth shaded in. Remember, each of these whole columns is a tenth. But as you can see, tenth, from this number, I have no tenths, and I have 5 hundredths. So I don't shade one of those in. Okay, let's do a couple together. Open your math notebook. And we're going to do this one first. 27 hundredths using base 10 blocks and 100 charge. 27 hundredths is going to be our number. So let me clear off my board. So we're going to represent the decimal 27 hundredths. So the first way there's two ways to think about it, right? One way is I can think about each of these two places, tenths and hundredths. And if I think about that, it tells me exactly which blocks to get out. It tells me to get out 2 tenths blocks and 7 hundredths blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if I'm going to represent it with the blocks, this is 2 tenths and 7 hundredths. Or it's, if you're used to thinking fractions, it's 2 tenths and 7 hundredths put together. Now the other way I can think about that is I can just read that as 27 hundredths. That's how I say it. And if I need 27 hundredths, that means 27 of these single pieces, right? So I'm going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. So that is 27 100ths. It's 27 100ths blocks. So that's what the decimal 27 100ths looks like with base 10 blocks. And works the exact same way on the hundredths chart. I can either think of this as being 2 tenths and 7 hundredths, in which case I would, a tenth is a whole column, 1 tenth, 2 tenths, sorry, my phone's ringing, and then I'll pick another color here, and then 7 100ths. Remember, each square is 100, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Looks just like my base 10 blocks, and that is 27 hundredths. Or I could just count 27 100ths. I could have gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27 hundredths. Either one works. It's 2 different ways to think about the same thing. Okay, let's do one more. 7 tenths. This is a little bit of a trickier one. Only because you'll notice there are no hundredths in this one. This is just 7 tenths. So if I go to my base 10 blocks here and freeze on them. So now I'm just dealing with the number 7 tenths. And I say that 7 tenths. All right. So there are no hundredths here. So 7 tenths, this is a tenth, right? 10 of these make a whole. If this is a whole, this is 1 tenth of this. So 7 tenths is just going to look like 7 of those. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't have any hundredths to put out there. So 7 tenths just like that. And even if you want to think place value, it's 7 in the tenths place. And there are no hundredths. There's no hundredths to put down here. There's not even something over there. It's a 0 that we don't even see, 7 hundredths. All right. Back to my hundredths chart. Same way. So remember, this is where you've got to know that each column is a tenth. Column equals tenth, because there's 10 columns. Or you could do rows too, doesn't really matter. So I'm going to have to shade in 7 tenths. So there's 1 tenth, 2 tenths, 3 tenths, 4 tenths, 5 tenths, 6 tenths, and 7 tenths. That is 7 out of 10 columns, which is 7 tenths. All right, so that is how decimals look with a hundredths chart or base 10 blocks. If this was tricky, please go back. There's 4 great examples. Watch and think through them again. This is one of those things I'm going to warn you. This is easy to watch me do. and harder to do yourself sometimes. So make sure you really have a good